And welcome everyone. We do have a bit of a shift up. You can see that Jenny was not available today, so I've recruited Effie Trial from ESD 112. She'll be able to introduce herself in a bit. We are focusing today on our Structured Literacy Interventions book study, Chapter 6, Structured Literacy Interventions for Vocabulary. We always start off with a land acknowledgement. And because this is a book study where we do invite people to come in and out of, I do think I have a poll asking if there's anyone new with us today. Thank you, Carla. We do have somebody finishing up an IEP meeting. Well, we look forward to you joining us when you can. Effie, there's another piece there that Dell is going to be in and out, not really available until hopefully, by 4, he should set 3:45. All right, looks like nobody new, so I'll end that off. That was only 66. That's not what I meant to do. If anybody comes in new who's never been with us before, just give us a holler. I do have our tribal nations maps, and I can put into the chat box for you. And I invite you to share where you are, information about your tribal lands, and an invitation to collaborate and learn from each other. Additionally, I have resources about one of my agency has been focusing people's information and ideas every week during Black History Month on some individual from history. I will add in though I think I probably have in the past, but there's another great opportunity on my Padlet. The videos from LeDerek Horn that he collected for Black History Month, focusing on individuals with disabilities. So I'll pull that up and add that in as well. Thank you, Emily, for sharing your land acknowledgement. Here under individuals with dyslexia, here's his celebrating Black History Month and people with disabilities.
Hi, I'm LeDerek Horn, and
there we go. I'll just grab it and put it in the chat box for us. Okay, so we have our Zoom tips. I don't think we have anyone new, so I'll just kind of go through that really quickly. Opportunities to share where you're joining us from. And if you don't have the ability to put that into the chat box or rename yourself, I'm sorry, if you don't have the ability to rename yourself, let us know. Effie and I need to make Effie co-host. We can rename you for you so that we can all see where everyone's joining us from as we contribute to our co-learning community. So those are our tips to bring through, annotations. We also always start with our teaching and learning beliefs. And I do invite you during this time just to take a pause and annotate or put in the chat box what stands out to you. I've changed the color for the words and phrases that are most important to me from our list of beliefs. Effie, does your ESD have this where your teaching and learning beliefs?
I haven't seen anything specifically like that we have developed, but that's a nice thing.
I like it. I think it personalizes a little bit to say this is what drives us and what where the lens we see through. And for me, the biggest ones, the growth mindset, the relationships, that quality teaching, the active engagement. Anyone else? You don't have to contribute, but it's always an invitation. Likewise here, an invitation to stay engaged, to refrain from judgments, to share openly, to accept and expect non-closure, to use technology to enhance our learning, to give ourselves and each other grace. Is there anything else that anybody feels would be important to call out as an opportunity for us to work best together today?
What do you think expect and accept non-closure means?
Well, it's funny you should say that. We just brought it up this morning because we had such a small amount of time to talk about our equity work. And we're just going to say this is an ongoing process. And for me, when it comes to the literacy work is there's always more to learn. So that's what it is to me.
Great, thank you.
It's something also that is in the agreements from a book that our literacy cadre across the state worked through, which is Glenn Singleton's Courageous Conversations About Race. And one of the areas there is this expect and accept non-closure, that we continue this work, but we don't always get the answers of everything that is that ongoing work in areas of our life.
Thank you for the background. That's helpful.
Thanks, Emily. All right. And obviously I need a bigger clip for my hair, but that's okay. We'll make it work. Okay. So we do you want to make sure you have opportunities for breakout discussions, for chat. We do have a Jamboard that we will put into the chat box. Actually, the Jamboard is linked onto, I'll put the Jamboard here right now. Hopefully I didn't just click it because it's going to open up in front of that. And we also have a resource guide, which the Jamboard is linked on. There you go. There's our Jamboard. Also, Effie, I don't know if you were able to, I'm going to grab the attendance link and the resource list for you. And on that resource, Jenny and I and Effie's added to it, I think too. We've added in resources that we've found that go along with the different chapters. So speaking of the different chapters, here's where we are in chapter 6, looking at the big picture. We've been together now 6 months. We've been doing once per month, haven't we? So hats off or applause to those of you who've been sticking with us. We have looks like a dozen people joining, or 11 if you want to. I think Effie's counted in that number and IR. So thank you for sticking through. And it's just a nice an opportunity just to touch base and have conversations about these topics. So this is the same agenda that we try to stick to every time. We talk about some orientation and introductions. We talk about who's here, the materials, the book, and then we'll get into chapter 6. So at this point, everybody knows me, but Effie's new to the group. So Effie, would you mind introducing yourself? And if for those of you who are who have been here before, you can put your name and your district if it isn't already on your pictures. We can scroll through, and you can also go to the Jamboard, which I thought I had up. I will bring up again. Let me put that Jamboard, and you can go to the frames on your role. There's the hopes and goals. You can make sure that you are represented somewhere on the Jamboard. So you can see we have a parking lot here, and there's our map. We have Roxanne, who's joining us tonight again as well, and we have our hopes and goals here, as well as some other suggestions and activities that we'll be doing later. So Effie, will you share with us a little bit about why I asked you to join us?
Hi, I am Effie Trial. I am the literacy coordinator for ESD 112. So all of you have a literacy coordinator at your ESDs, and I work closely with all of them on our statewide group. And I do a lot of work with Alicia on some professional development we've been doing, and I've been serving on the Dyslexia Council the last few years, and we've been really digging in and do a lot of work with structured literacy and just various projects. So down here at the ESD, I also, when I say down here, it's because I'm in Vancouver, Washington. So I feel like I'm down at the border here, which I am. And so I work with the districts that run up through Castle Rock, Toutle, out to Ocean Beach, and through the gorge into Wishroom, over getting close to Goldendale, where it moves into ESD 105. So if you make that smaller for me, that would be great.
Yep. I was just thinking I was going to add it while you were talking.
And so I worked for Vancouver Public Schools for about 13 years before coming to the ESD in 2014. So I've been doing this work regionally and statewide for a while now. And I do also a lot of work with our bilingual, multilingual directors in providing training and hosting meetings and just being their kind of liaison to all things multilingual that I can help with, as well as support our Title I directors and LAP directors in the region. I also have a fun project that I get to coordinate the Teacher of the Year and Classified Staff of the Year things, and do a lot of work with equity in different committees. So happy to be here and jump in. And I love vocabulary. So that was, and you actually gave me an idea for something as I was reading through here, that I need a proposal for a conference, and
Awesome.
springboard something there for me. So,
Thank you.
nice to meet you all.
I also, frankly, I learned the hard way the past couple of last Thursday when I was by myself and my power went out and the internet went out, of course, because power went out and I had to run into the office. And when I was trying to keep in, join in via Zoom on my phone, and they said, don't worry about it, we'll take a break. Just jump back in when you get to the office. So I went to hit leave meeting and I hit end meeting. Hence, I mean, everybody was great, but nonetheless, the technology is great until it's not, right, everyone? So on our materials, I'm just going to pull up our resources for you so you can see the links. This is also where you can see some videos. And I do have a session recording from session 4. The first couple months were a little bit rough for that. I'm still going to do what I can, but you can see when there are session recordings. There are also videos of Patton's book study, and that's from Pennsylvania, their Teacher Assistance Network. And then I will be adding in the slide deck later on today, so you can see that as well. So that's as we look at the resources. I will say, though, our slide decks are not ADA compliant, so please do not share them to people who need an e-reader. So I'm just going to put all of the things that we need in there. Oh, awesome. We will grab the attendance link as well. So let me grab these resources.
I can get the attendance link.
Perfect. Thank you. See, that's what teamwork is all about. Okay. All right. So let's jump into chapter 6. As Jenny and I have done, Effie and I have done as well, we've taken a springboard from the chapter. We've taken a few things that we want to add in. And then we also want to give you opportunities to chat and to kind of process and add to other opportunities and things that jumped out at you from the chapter as well. So these were a couple of things that I pulled out from page 115 and 116. I have to make sure I got my book at my fingertips. I think I took it with me to the office to talk to you, Effie. Now I've got to find it. It's in my backpack. Okay. So I'm just going to give us a moment to read these. And my invitation to engage here is, these were two things that really stood out for me, as well as I have a list on the big ideas in teaching vocabularies through structured literacy. But I'm just going to pause this here first. Whoops. And see if there's anything else that other people would want to add to just kind of main big concepts. I'm going to stop talking, let you read. And get my copy of the book. Okay. Any thoughts on those two quotes before we start? I do, of course, but no one's surprised by that.
The first one, there was a word on page 125 that jumped out at me that I hadn't down on Violet's experience, and the word was nuanced. And I just thought that was a really powerful word, and that we're always talking about what a word means and what the definition is and how it's used in context. But nuanced is a deeper understanding that I'm like, that's a really powerful word to use when thinking about vocabulary. I
appreciate that. It also makes me think about when we say the deeper their understanding, when I said, of course, I have things to think about, is that connection that we talked about months ago between the sound, the symbol, and the form. So the orthography of a word, the phonology of a word, and the semantics, the meaning. And thinking about that deep understanding, it's not just then, as we're going to explore it, actually, I think we have this image later on, that when we're talking about the meaning, there's so many different ways of knowing meaning. And this is, again, Emily, when you talked about, the expecting, accepting, non-closure, there are so many ways we can learn about words. And this is, especially when it comes to vocabulary, there are so many more words that we can be learning and learning the nuance of. So one of the discussions we were having before we started was a discussion, a video I've been watching about whether or not to teach blends. And they were saying that if we recognized and taught kids the SK blend at the end or the CK blend, and if we did words like gasket and pocket, we help our kids start recognizing that suffix ET, meaning a small piece of, like, so a pocket is a small pock, when pock is actually an old-fashioned word for hole. So you're these ETs meaning diminutive. It was food for thought, but it was a deeper thought than I had about the understanding of these words. Or she was saying that the SN all have to do with the nose, like sneeze and sniffle, and so it was just interesting food for thought. That, again, how deeply do we know those words? And we also had a conversation about pictures with kids with dyslexia. And I'm thinking about that their access to their vocabulary through what they're reading is limited by the simple text that they can decode. And this is why we have to do so much oral language support for our kids to develop their vocabulary through their listening comprehension more than their reading comprehension. Go ahead, Effie.
Well, it was just that about the pictures and the picture sort. I love a sort. And so with, yes, younger grades and students who have those needs for visuals, and our multilingual learners and our students who sing with dyslexia, that is really powerful, because we do so much in print with the word that building vocabulary with that, with pictures. We talked about, years ago, before we had the internet as an access, I wrote a grant to support building these boards to support what was ReadWell at the time that we were using, and we needed some pictures to go with it. So we had to write this grant, which was for printer cartridges, paper, and we cut them and pasted them and created these really great folders. So that even goes back to like the pictures to build the vocabulary. So, but sorting them, I like that.
I appreciate that.
Historical.
Yeah. One of the things, so Effie and I also glanced at we looked at the video, which was chapter 6 here, Dr. Mike Coyne, who was one of the authors of this chapter. And we were looking through it a bit. And one of the things that struck out to us was his emphasis on the main ideas in beginning reading. And I like this as a framework for us to think about. One of the things he talked about is that we don't go from phonemic, if you think about the big 5, the National Reading Panel, phonemic awareness, alphabetic root principle, fluency, vocabulary comprehension. It's not like okay, we build one, then we build the other, then it builds 2. Because while yes, and we've talked about before, you remember these ones do build to this. At the same time, and actually I have some animations here, he says, no, that we need to not see this as a linear path to comprehension, but it's more a bit like this. And actually this is, Effie and I made some alterations to his, because I've added the background knowledge and the understanding of syntax and the prosodic reading. And we talked about the complexity of this, that we need to be working on their vocabulary and the background knowledge at the same time that we're working on their word reading skills. So the top strand being the word reading skills, the bottom strand being the language comprehension skills. so that as those come together, so that I can read with prosody, where I can read with emphasis in the appropriate places, and the emotion and the pausing relies upon my understanding of vocabulary and my background knowledge and my understanding of how these phrases work together, all coming together for me to be able to understand what I read. So I wanted to make a visual of that. I thought it was useful for us. Thoughts? Does this make sense? Does that like work for anybody?
I guess I'm having a hard time imagining like what, well, but I'm not a classroom teacher. I'm a reading specialist. So I'm like hoping that vocabulary is happening back in the classroom while I'm teaching the phonics. Right?
Because your focus is up here on this top row more.
Right, right.
I totally get that, because this is where our interventions have been focusing on that word reading piece.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm totally with you as a former special educator. As a special educator, this is where, because that's where my weaknesses were with most of my kids. I mean, granted, yes, we need to build this as well, but I'm with you that our intervention is, if we're focusing on the top, let's make sure that hopefully the bottom one's happening in the gen ed classroom as well.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Effie, you were a gen ed classroom. How was this balance for you?
I was a gen ed classroom teacher. We won't talk about my first year of teaching, but we'll talk about the years after that, because my first year was kindergarten. But when I really got my training, I was in second grade, when I really got my deep literacy and reading first training. So I used to take the components of literacy and put them on the board and keep track for myself, like when to get myself trained into using all the areas. So when I was teaching vocabulary, when I was teaching phonemic awareness, when I was doing something with explicit for comprehension, and so fluency. And so my kids started to learn all the terminology with me, because it was like the whole metacognitive piece of it for me to help myself, because otherwise I would kind of forget. And so it helped me label it and understand what I was doing. And that's when I fell in love with not so much phonemic awareness specifically, but phonological awareness, and the power of the big umbrella of phonological awareness, and the syllabication and rhyming and all of those pieces. So I got kind of good at blending it all together, and knowing that comprehension was, the big daddy of them all, that's where I was headed. But the kids helped me, and I helped myself. I scaffolded it for myself so that I would do it all together.
Well, as I was hearing you, I was thinking about, like, Emily, even when I was taught kids with dyslexia, and we did kind of break this down into, this was what we called language training, and then this would be more what we called the language arts. At the same time, even in our language training, if I would have a word of decoding words that we were working on, and if I were working on a pattern and I want to do like human and hummus, and looking at that maybe they don't know what hummus is, and maybe that's an opportunity to, in the moment, or wombat, or whatever pattern I'm working on, maybe I'm making sure that they're having some comfort and understanding of those words that I'm working on with that particular pattern as well.
And another piece, an element of my 24 students, my second year of teaching, I believe it was, 12 were multilingual students, Spanish, Bosnian, Ukrainian, Russian predominantly. And 2 of them were on some fairly significant learning disabilities and IEPs that I really had to account for, where there were transfer issues. Again, I'm going to date myself, from my overhead to what they were doing. So I had to adapt. And so I had to be really explicit with what I was doing for, 75% of my kids. So that also forced myself into really like I said, really paying attention to all these elements. And then I got a student teacher my third year of teaching. And so the metacognitive piece that I had trained myself in was really helpful because I did it then for her
I appreciate that.
as well.
A couple other things before we want to give you some time to talk to each other soon. These were the headings that I really realized that they did talk about them in a table on page early on. I put that one here. Page 117, but then they went into depth in the rest of the chapter. So I thought this was a summary of what we had there, which is they provide a small group instruction, choosing which words to teach, develop student-friendly definitions, provide both definitions and context, because as we know, the context really, because so many of our words are polysemous, that even if I say, for example, the word bats, it could be something I'm hitting with baseball, or it could be something in an animal. So many of our words mean different things in different contexts. So then we have explicit instruction, extended instruction, providing feedback, and doing review. So I wanted to talk about a few of these, and then we're going to give you opportunities to just kind of chat with each other, and then we'll have some more chat and then come back and do some more about both of those. We weren't able to come up with as many great activities this time, but we'll have give you chatting time. So this came from Louisa Moates' speech to print and Anita Archer. Whoops, I haven't gone too far. Okay. On that whole, which words do we teach? And I pulled this, which kind of goes along with their question of choosing words to teach, which starts on page 118. And they talk about selecting academic vocabulary to teach directly. But I found these useful as well. How generally useful is the word? How does it relate to other words, to ideas that the students know or have been learning? What does it bring to a text? This was another way of looking at it, is that does it provide accessibility? Is it a general purpose word? So that would be, Effie's going to talk about tiers of words in a moment, which I don't think they talked about in the text at all, did they?
They referenced her work, but they did do some.
I think colleagues, there we go, tier 1, tier 2, and 3. That's on page 119.
Yeah, 119, back colleagues.
Is it critical to understanding the text? Does it support growth and generating word learning? Like, does it really help me understand morphology or the semantic relatives, like I was saying with the ET suffix there, and understanding multiple meanings? Effie, do you want to talk about, because I'd like your images better than mine.
So here is one that we've been using for a while, and it just, sometimes you'll see them flip-flopped, but we really want to put the tier 1 words at the base, that it's the everyday words of speech. And so the next couple slides, as we go through these, we'll give some details of actual words. So there we go with the most basic speech words. And Alicia was asking me about this picture. And so, it's rebar. And if you've been involved in construction at all, and we built our house, and my dad, I remembered years ago, added on a basement, and I remember the rebar, and it's inside the concrete that is poured to give it that sturdy foundation. So these are our words that are just our foundational basic words. You will notice that there are oftentimes words that we would consider tier 1 words, but for a multilingual learner could be a tier 2 word. And so I have an example of that. That's the one that I go to immediately when I always talk about this, is the word table. So the word table would appear to be a tier 1 word when you're thinking about we eat at the table. We are sitting at the table. Obviously, it gets other uses. It's a multiple meaning word. So when we move into the word table as a math concept, that could pull it very easily into tier 2. So some of the words, there isn't a a policing of what category these words are in. And also, if you think about it, it's basically a pre-K and up model. So we don't have it per grade level. So you have to kind of adjust and monitor. But if you look at these, go, I, happy, get, name, sad, sat, these are words that don't typically take a lot of instruction. The kids are familiar with them, they're easy to define, and they get a lot of daily use. So moving into tier 2, and
Before we get off of these, I'm just going to add on and clear this off, that while these are really, that we don't need to teach the meanings, these are usually old English words, Anglo-Saxon words, and therefore really hard, a lot harder to read and spell than the others.
than to know what they are. They're harder to read and spell. Said would be a hard word to spell, but easier to understand. So then tier 2 is really where we want to concentrate, and you've maybe heard this before. This is where we want to concentrate a lot of our energy. So this is where, when oftentimes you'll look at curriculum and they will have picked those vocabulary words for you. And I remember being a child, and I was in about 4th or 5th grade, and I still know what this word is, and I guess it's good I know what it is, but I remember a vocabulary word being syncopation. And I thought, wow, that's an interesting word. And so now when I reflect on that, that would be more of a tier 3 word than a tier 2 word. It might be relevant to the story, but we're just going to define it and move on. So we'll talk about tier 3 a little bit more in a moment, but tier 2 is where you're going to really look beyond the words that are provided for you by the publisher. And if you notice, one thing I always try to say too is, we never want students to do poorly on an assessment because they don't understand the words in the directions. And oftentimes these are words that are in the directions. So students might know the content. They might have a deep understanding of, the frog life cycle, but they don't understand the word compare or similar, which might show up in the sentence. Back when we switched over, we were talking about this with somebody the other day about Wassel, I think it was, and that kids were struggling because they kept referring to the text as a source, and instead of and passage, and these weren't words that kids were familiar with because that was one of our early exams. So really understanding what is fewer, and if you see the word fewer, are these words that show up in math, they show up in history, so they're going to be in your social studies text. So really these are words that, if we look at these words, these are really important words to understanding how to make meaning of the content. They're the more than the content itself, but how we make meaning. And then we get our tier 3 words, which are always fun because then we get a lot of multisyllabic work most of the time. But if you think about how often we use these words in daily language and how much time you're going to spend, it's going to be more effective to spend time on your 2 words and just give them the definition of this. Use it in a student-friendly terms. It's important to know, but if we walk away and don't completely understand some of these ribosomes, but then we go on in high school to take that a class that is, my daughter's in AP Bio right now, and so those might be terms that'll be familiar to them. So it's using your time wisely, and this is all part of the tiered vocabulary. So oftentimes, I was telling Alicia, I live my life in a Venn diagram, always looking for overlap, but I also live my life a lot of times in tiers of vocabulary. Where's that word go? What am I going to do with that word? So any
I'm looking at the multimorphemicness of these. The multisyllabic.
Other fun words.
Well, and I'm thinking mito. I'm wondering, chondry, and then IA is a suffix here. Is it deposition, deposition? I mean, there's a lot to be going in here.
So sometimes we just have to given the word. So here's some criteria for focusing on tier 2 words. We were talking about this earlier, the utility and the importance. Is it a word they're likely to meet often in the world? Will they see this in cross content in those other areas of school and life? The barrier words. Does this word keep the student from understanding the text? And that, I think, kind of is a confusing one, because some of the tier 3 words could be barrier words, but they're really talking about, the conceptual understanding of understanding the text. And then how does it relate to other words and to ideas and students have been learning? And is there something else we can do with this word to bring along other words to help make meaning? And then concept. So that kind of goes back to the barrier words. Does this provide access to important concept with our learning? But really cross content is important.
Oh, is that video? Oh,
Yeah, that's the video.
hopefully it's going to work for us. So let me try.
Um,
Oh, was I able to?
I have to open it. I have to open it.
Okay, so I'm going to let you share. This is a short video that we found useful on talking about using college talk. It was a 2nd grade teacher and how she can help our students get raise up their talking level and their vocabularies.
It's very short.
I'm going to pause the recording.
You have to have a membership to the teaching.
The last video that we watched where she had that high academic, that college vocabulary, and but also finding that middle zone, because we talked about, we have a big number of or percentage of EL students, so like it's almost like sometimes I feel like I don't know, make my vocabulary smaller to make it more understandable. But then we also talked about, is that actually hurting the students because we're not expanding their vocabulary as much as we could maybe?
The question is, do we have the time to do both? Huh?
So Alicia, we brought up something in our breakout that kind of helps with that, because Brittany, my 2nd year of teaching, I said I had 12 ELL students and then some special needs that I had to address. And I was just talking about Fancy Nancy. So are you familiar with Fancy Nancy? So, and I grew up, my dad's Greek, and so I grew up in a multilingual household, and bilingual at the time, multi now. And when I think about Fancy Nancy, it was like I grew up doing for him. And that's what I transitioned into doing in the classroom when I read that. So I always remember elegant means. And so introduce that word to the students, but then I always call it just backfilling. Fill it with the words that are familiar and common to them. Elegant. Oh, this was whatever you're teaching is something that was amazing. Amazing means something you're really, really excited about or haven't seen before and are surprised about. So I just informally call it backfilling language. And remember, that's what I did for my dad throughout my life until I got able to attach the pedagogy to it. When I was in a meeting and they started talking about BICS, the basic interpersonal communication, and CALP, the cognitive academic language, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is what we've been doing. And then you throw the Big Fat Creek Wedding in there, and it's a whole big fun education in literacy and culture. So yeah, think about that when you want to say a word and teach it to them. Think about just how you're going to explain it to them in person friendly language that they'd understand.
That's a great segue to the student-friendly language, but also as I heard you talk about backfilling, I was thinking about the term circumlocution that we used in the ESL world when I was working on my master's in TESOL. Whoop, I didn't mean to make everything go away. and thinking about the circum meaning around. And so those are when you have words to talk around the word you don't know. And so all those words can not talk around the word you're trying to teach and helping them get that aroundness. Does anybody else have anything they want to add before we get into those student-friendly definitions? Shasta, welcome. I don't remember what district you're with, Shasta. Mile High? Mile something? Mile?
9 Mile Falls.
Yeah.
You were pretty close. Yeah, I'm sorry. I was telling my group I'm late because my IEP meeting where we were talking about vocabulary and how our student was struggling with vocabulary ran late, but I got to present a lot of stuff from this chapter, which was good.
Awesome.
Yes.
We'd love to hear which parts of it were that you were able to draw into. In fact,
So-
go ahead.
I also did, so the patent videos I really liked because they kind of give like a little resource with it. And so I did talking about word families, like approach, approaching, blah, blah, and kind of talking about it from that perspective. I also talked about how to scaffold the vocabulary pieces, like I give 2 sentences and then she's able to say trying to get the definition from there. Eventually she'll get to a point that she can say it herself. But we really focused in on the word families today and what was holding her back in terms of just, she doesn't have a math goal, but her vocabulary was hurting her in math and science and all these other things because she didn't have the vocabulary to do it. And I was able to tell them like, well, we know that reading comprehension is going to be big for her come 4th grade. Not that it's not big now, but really big. And one of the best predictors of that is vocabulary. And I think I just felt like a level of confidence in with it. So I was able to kind of present some information to them, which was nice.
Awesome. Great, Shasta. Thank you. It's funny because what you were saying too made me think of some of the more in-depth pieces that I've added about how the different ways of knowing a word. So I'll add that up in a minute. These are some of the things that I think I've seen. I can't remember if this was from the text or from elsewhere, but kind of that creating the student-friendly definitions and how we, as you said, how is this typically used? Because that can sometimes get in the way as well as that meaning in everyday use. I have some fun examples that I got from colleagues. This one, for example, ally, which if somebody put in a quote into my last one, teachers have a superpower. They can come up with an example sentence in under 10 seconds. The question is, would anybody want to share their example? This is a fun one, is if the definition said one associated with another. So then hence versus someone who helps you in what you were trying to do. So if you said one associated with another, well, that's so much more vague and difficult for your kids. And so really, if you want to help your students get to someone is my ally, especially during recess when we play Foursquare, that's definitely clearer than if I had just one associated with another. Maybe that peanut butter and jelly are allies. They're associated with another. So that doesn't really get to the meaning of ally, though. This is another one I enjoyed. So how about covert? Dictionary definition, kept from sight, secret, hidden. So your kids come up with, I told my friend a covert. Of course, now this would be also important if they recognize the grammatical part that, kept from secret is hidden. This is a covert is an adjective, but a covert, we're using it as a noun there. Thank you, Brittany. And then we've got versus, if I say covert, it describes something that's done in a secret or hidden way, then we could say I had to be covert when I passed some note to my class. Here's another one, disrupt. If the definition says to break up or split, your kids might write, we disrupted the candy bar so we could eat it. Versus if you help them say, it's actually to cause difficulties that stop someone from continuing either easily or peacefully. Okay, I disrupted my science class when I broke the glass beaker, using another one. This is another way that we think about extent of word knowledge. And again, I can't remember if this was in this chapter or not, but this is one I actually pulled from my colleagues when I was teaching high school. But I've seen many different ways of utilizing this scale of, yeah, I know this word, I use it regularly, I think I know this word, I've seen it or I've heard it before, but I'm not sure what it means, and no clue. So kind of as you're starting with your vocabulary work with your kids, help them see where are they right now so they can see their growth on that. And this also gives you a clue on those, which ones to be teaching. But I didn't plant Shasta, honestly, but when she talks about sentences, it made me think too of the different kinds of categories of context found in natural texts that we often will teach and tell kids, well, just look at the context. Emily, does that always work? Yeah. We're going to have a fun activity on why not. So these are 4 different kinds of contexts in natural texts. And Carla, I think I have 3rd grade, right? Carla Flores Pennewick, 3rd grade? Looking at my notes.
Whose name did you say? I wasn't sure if you had said mine.
Carla.
Oh, okay, sorry.
That's okay.
I'm
Shasta,
sorry. Sorry, what did you say?
I'm trying to remember what grade you're teaching.
K5 resource.
K5, thank you. And Shasta, your resource too, huh?
Yeah, I teach resource 3rd grade only, but I used to
nice.
3rd and 5th, and then I teach self-contained K through 5.
Okay, so
But I did want to mention about the sentences.
Mhm.
So I've been trying something new this year where my students and I are creating the goals together for their IEPs, which is really fun and I highly recommend it. And my student, without me telling her anything about vocabulary or whatever this year, she's in the 3rd grade. She was like, well, I think I really need to work on my vocabulary because it's really making me struggle in nonfiction text. That
awesome.
was what she said on her own, where she was like, it's really holding me back in nonfiction text. And I was like, all right.
What a
way to
great
go.
recognition. Thanks, Shasta. I appreciate that. I don't think this was brought up in the text though. And again, as we said, the context found in natural texts, notice how that they don't all help you get there. Some may reveal a different direct definition. Some may give you no help at all. Some give you an idea of a category, and some will actually help you. So I've done this before where if we had more time, we can go and put a guess which type, but I can just put it up. So this would be an example. Actually, Effie, you want to read the sentence for us?
Yes. Joe and Stan arrived at the party at 7 o'clock. By 9:30, the evening seemed to drag for Stan, but Joe really seemed to be having a good time at the party. I wish I could be as gregarious as he is, thought Stan.
So that one, if you remember the 4 categories, would be an example of a general that you get an idea that it's positive, but you have, unless you know the word gregarious, there's nothing that gives you a clue that means he's very talkative. He's having a good time. So maybe that's he's easygoing, he's da-da-da-da. I know it's a positive thing, but I don't know it. Carla, do you want to?
I just think that sentence weird, not for a different reason. If you look at language, it has 7 o'clock written out, but then 9:30.
That is interesting.
I just noticed that. I haven't seen that in a while.
So
Okay.
let's look at this one.
Dan heard the door open and wondered who had arrived. He couldn't make out the voices. Then he recognized the lumbering footsteps on the stairs and knew it was Aunt Grace.
Does the context help you understand what lumbering is?
No.
Not at all. I mean, this one we're saying non-directive. I have no idea. Can't tell if that's positive, negative, no clue about that. Okay, here's another one.
Sandra had won the dance contest and the audience's cheers brought her to the stage for an encore. Every step she takes is so perfect and graceful, Ginny said grudgingly as she watched Sandra dance.
So does that help you understand what grudgingly is? Well, I'm like looking at Carla shaking her head. Emily's like, no, that might make me think that grudgingly is a good thing, right? Because she's talking about especially so Effie's tone that she put in, because she knows the definition of grudgingly, she might have said this kind of in a grudgingly way versus Sandra had won the dance contest and the audience's cheers brought her to stage. Every step she takes is so perfect and graceful. That would definitely misdirect you, wouldn't it? So knowing the content, if we know the vocabulary as we read it, we could be helping them understand a little bit. So her tone helped.
Yeah, but it came
didn't.
a little too late and I even knew it. So I could have expressed it a little bit even more grudgingly, but I was like, she won the dance contest. That automatically in my brain takes over as a happy thing. And then I remember my daughter going to go see the Nutcracker, and she did not like taking ballet. And at the end of it, she asked if those kids all did that, like, because they wanted to. So she said it in a grudgingly way. They had to do all that ballet, and did they like it?
So again, background knowledge.
Background, yeah.
Very different. All right, last one.
Okay. When the cat pounced on the dog, he leapt up, yelping, and knocked down a shelf of books. The animals ran past Wendy, tripping her. She cried out and fell to the floor. As the noise and the confusion mounted, Mother hollered upstairs, "What's all that commotion?"
That one certainly helps. I mean, would somebody want to talk about what helps them and why? I mean, there's a lot there that helps us understand what commotion is, don't you think?
We know that if you knock down a shelf of books, it's going to make a bunch of noise.
There's tripping, there's noise, there's confusion. Thanks, Del. You've joined us. So when we're teaching word meaning, this is just kind of some review. This is from Louisa Moats. I do have a few things. We talked about already the choosing words that are central to the topic. I've heard, I think Shasta brought up teaching those meanings in relation to other known words, thinking about linguistic and situational context, those multiple meanings. Figurative language is really important. When we're talking about multiple meanings, remember the definition difference between connotative and denotative. Denotative being the dictionary definition and connotation being what you feel about it. So for example, if you think about the difference between skinny and slender, or skinny and thin, or pushy and aggressive, they're both kind of dictionary definitions the same, but the feeling of it is different. And so kind of that brings into the depth of our vocabulary knowledge. And so this comes from Nancy Hennessy's book, The Reading Comprehension Blueprint. And I liked how she's saying how when we think about semantics, my understanding of meaning, I have to think about what are the morphemes and how to, like when we talked about gasket and pocket, those morphemes that contribute to my understanding of meanings. We have to think about the category of, so when we said grudgingly, it's an adjective that it tells me about, it's not grudgingly, what's the other one that was the positive one? Oh, gregarious. It tells me that somebody is enjoying themselves, but it doesn't tell me the specifics that hence I need to know more about the word. But a semantic category can help, for example, find that larch and evergreen and palm, these are all kinds of trees. So that would be a semantic category, as it's that category that I can group and put all these things in, versus the syntax, the grammatical piece, the connotations, and then the figurative use. This was another one I think I took from that same book, looking at, again, connotation, denotation, what's the word's form, what are its synonyms, what are some examples in context. So that's what the pieces I wanted to go into, deeply knowing a word. And should we do another pause and reflect, Effie, or should we go into the steps of an explicit vocabulary lesson and then do our...
Yeah, go into the steps and then.
Okay. That's what I was thinking. Do you want to talk about these? Oh yeah, this is from the Big Dipper. Go ahead.
This is from, yeah, so there's a training from the Big Dippers. It is if you're not familiar with it, it's an asynchronous training on structured literacy and the science of reading. It does have a fee, but it's very well done.
It's not a big fee, wasn't it? Like
It's
75?
not a big fee, no. And so it is something you can look up. It's around $100 or so to participate. And if you have a group, there's a discount. The price changed a little bit, and your membership is good for a year. And they also encourage you to download a lot of the visuals and different pieces of it to keep as long as you want. Lots of videos in there that are actually open source videos, but it's put together in a way and has checkpoints that it's well done for asynchronous work. So in this, there's the 6 steps of an explicit vocabulary lesson. And so looking at these steps, so thinking about all of what we've already been learning, and there's different ways, different researchers that present things in different ways, and finding pieces that work for you. And then you'll see overlap, obviously, in some of these too. So introducing the word, really studying the word, talking about the morphology of the word and the chunks of the word. And then we should have slides for each of these, I think, too. Define and explain the word. So we always want to give that friendly definition. Use the word, help the students use the word, create those associations with examples and non-examples. And in our reading in this chapter, it talked a lot about non-examples, which is something Dr. Beck and colleagues uses in bringing words to life, their text. And then word learning strategies. Again, there's different ways of learning words, whether it's explicit or implicit vocabulary. And so the first one here, they get really into the details of this, telling you, I'm not going to read this out loud to you, but take a moment to read this slide.
There's that rating system I mentioned.
Assess the students' knowledge, and that's something that also is in the core materials. The core source book, the Consortium on Reading Excellence, is about rating the word knowledge. Is this a word I know and I could explain to somebody else? Is this a word I've heard of? I don't know this word. So that's kind of a interesting thing to do, to explicitly ask students, do you know? So Alicia is holding up this resource. It's also a great resource. They also have a specific one for vocabulary, but a lot of the vocabulary is in the big source book there. So we'll put the link to those in there too. And then looking at students really studying the word, look for the parts of the word. Like we said, the morphology of the word. Being Greek, like I mentioned, we look for Greek roots. We look for Latin roots. Look for any of the parts of the word that are familiar. Think of the word sparks any prior associations. Does this word remind you of another word or another concept? Determine the word's parts of speech. And then the morphological uses related to the word. Again, like what words, what connections can we make? There's the origin in your explanation. So this is a fun thing for me. I love this part of language. It's kind of that linguistics piece. So defining and explaining the word. What?
There's that contextual usage. What does it mean in this context versus what does it mean in another one?
Right. And then we talked about pictures earlier, and we talked about picture sorts. And so show an image or demonstrate the word's meaning. I think one of the ones they used in the book was flexible, and having pictures of a bendy straw or yoga, or making sure it's a person who is flexible for the yoga. Carla, I love learning the history of words. I know, I love learning the history of words. And then there was a training the other day, and they were talking about different history of words. Have
I shared with you all the Erica Okrentz stuff? I'm not able to move this. Oh, that's why. Do you know Erica Ockrent's videos, Effie?
Oh, yeah, you showed me some of those. Yes.
So for the rest of you, whoops, I have to go to YouTube. Erica Ockrent's, when Carla, you mentioned the learning about the history of words, these are one of my favorite sources for learning about why things are spelled the way they are and where the history of them. Although I've gotten into a new one too. Just this is where I geek out. So Erica Ockrent's are, there it is. She has why, like woulda, coulda, shoulda, where does that L come from? I'll put that into the chat box. And then the new one I've been watching was a British guy. Let's see if I saved it in here somewhere. I'll have to look for it while you're in your next breakouts, because there's another one. Do I have enough saved here? I'll look for it and find it. So anybody, there is also David Crystal's Spell It Out was a good one too on learning about the history of words. Carla, which book? Do you mean Erica's book or another one? So Erica does have one that's about like, it's called Woulda, Coulda, Shoulda. No, it's highly irregular. Oh, hers wasn't that bad. It was like $30. It was highly irregular, I think. 70 is, there's another really good one that is quite expensive. It's, I think it's an American Way of Spelling by Richard Vanetsky. And that is an expensive one, but I think that Erica Ockrent's is not so. And it's really fun too, how it's written. Let's see if we can, yeah, looks like $20 for this one. I did have it. I lent it to somebody. So, anyway, okay. The eliciting use, some options there. Stems, I think that Shasta talked about, different ways of that she's using sentences with her students.
And that is very supportive of multilingual students and using stems. And then those of you that are from schools that have used Avid, they use a lot of stems for support for students. Sentence frames, very much SIOP and GLAD as well with the sentence frames, like I said, with multilingual students. Examples of non-examples, and it had one of those pieces, and I know that's in the Dr. Isabel Beck book as well, is it a morsel? Is a yes or no? Is it a whole cake a morsel? Is a crumb from a muffin a morsel? So using examples and non-examples.
And then lastly was the word learning strategies like precise and flexible meanings, semantic overlaps, creating word wet networks. Gradable antonyms, I think, is a fun one. Where you'll have like ugly and pretty, and what are the gradations between those? Or horrific and wonderful, what are the gradations between those? Contextual analysis, what is it meaning in this context?
And the word networks, I think in that core book, it has a graphic organizer that has the word drum in the middle, and then all the different types of connections to drums, bongo, timpani. And so building that vocabulary using a tier 1 or tier 2 word, you can build out more of the tier 2 and tier 3 vocabulary using those kinds of networks.
So we did talk about a routine for learning new words, and this section that they have explicit literacy or explicit teaching using explicit instruction. It's pretty small, so we're adding more, obviously. I have here from Louisa Motes, but this is, you can also see it in Anita Archer's work. I have a short video that we can look at. And again, this is kind of like what we saw earlier, that provide that definition, provide examples, ask students to have yes or no questions, ask students to make a sentence with it, revisit it in lots of different contexts. So I'm going to put in a short video of Anita Archer doing this with a second grader. And I'll put the video in case there are issues with this. And then we have, I have a checklist that I'll actually put into the Jamboard rather than us talk about whole group. I'll give us a couple more just kind of frameworks, and then we'll go into our breakout rooms to talk about what we see here, as well as multiple meanings of words and other, and then some activity. There was an activity that we typed in as well. So we're going to start with this first. I'm going to pause the recording or who weren't able to be with us today. So let's hear about some of your conversations, and I can take us back to the Jamboard if anyone wants to chat about either first start with what we saw in the video, with the next frame was what did multiple meanings of words, or the sample passage, or anything else from the chapter that you had a chance to talk about. Hopefully I gave you enough time. If not, please let me know. We can make it longer. Go ahead, Carrie.
So Amanda was talking in our group, and she was talking about, because we were talking about the video, and we were talking about how fast Anita Archer was saying that, and she said, Amanda said that is part of her deal, like that you just keep it going and keep those kids moving. And I thought that was good in most situations. Sometimes it could be, tough for the kiddos, but I was curious if that was how she does that with all of her teachings, or all of her lessons, I guess.
As Effie put in there, perky pace. It's kind of one of her hallmarks. And she's, in fact, I've got on the wall behind me the explicit instruction Archerisms that she made a poster of. I got it from when I went to the Reading League in October last year, and she was an ending keynote. She's always like that. I mean, you go to one of her trainings. I did a full day with her back in 2014. She was in an event in Portland. Well, she lives in Portland, but she did a full day for Oregon branch of IDA, and you're just like, you're overwhelmed because that
It was exhausting listening to her.
Part of it is incorporating management by keeping that perky pace.
Yeah.
So that whole, and then she'll number students 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, and then be going along a perky pace, and then say 1s turn to 2s, and it's already set that they have their partner, and then she'll give another thing, 2s, your turn first, go to 1s. And so it makes that think, pair, share kind of
Really
quick. It's
streamlined.
Yeah. It's like very systematic.
We also talked about just the hand motions that she used with the vocab, and I talked, so I've done the GLAD training, and I really like how GLAD utilizes hand motions, and like with our vocab, we are, making hand motions. It becomes my attention getter. So like I was saying, if our social studies word was era, I would say, it's a period in time. And then all throughout my day, we're using era. I would say era, and they say period in time, and then they stop and do whatever. So just like that repetition and hand motions, and in GLAD, we use a graphic organizer where they're, thinking, and they're coming up with their own definitions first. We're looking up the definitions, we're talking about the word, and so I thought that was similar.
I love how Carrie's added, and this kind of made me, the other Carrie with a Y, added in the chat box that it might be inaccessible to language learners or kids with processing difficulties. And that's one of the things I was wondering, Carrie with an I, if you were talking about when you said, does she always do that? And I think that, yes, there's a yes and to both. I think that we need to be paying it. That depends on your learners and whether or not, I think the piece of the perky pace is so that kids are engaged all the time. But can we find other ways that make sure that we are including all of our kids' needs is definitely another question with that. I did take a picture. I started to go do so, and then I remembered that I had already done so. So I'm gonna I put it at the bottom of our resource list, so you can see her archerisms. And there's the where's the Perky? I thought Perky Pace was on here. I love her walk around, look around, talk around.
One of the pieces with Anita Archer and the Perky Pace is, keep in mind, she's the master of that. And I have participated in school visitations that she came to years ago, and gone to trainings with teachers and had that modeled and shown the video. I have yet to come across a teacher that does it as Perky. So it's like the extreme. And so we all still just kind of do it our own pace. But the whole point is pick it up a little bit to keep engagement going. But yeah, you got to adjust and monitor to your group. But I have yet to come across anybody that does it as fast as she does. And if they do, they're not doing it as well. So they need to slow down. So
She's truly a gem. How about another group? What did you talk about? And if we can move on from this to the next question of did anybody laugh at these?
yeah, this brought us into the Amelia Bedelia conversation. And
Oh,
at what age do they start understanding Amelia Bedelia and have that sense of humor and the knowledge base to know, like I said, dress the turkey? They
mhm.
might know, yeah, there's a dress on the turkey, but they don't know the
The other multiple meanings.
meanings.
Mhm. Did another group talk about this as well? Amanda, what did your group talk about?
Oh, I was in the group with Carrie. So she just kind of said that. We didn't even get to the next slide. So we hadn't even looked at that. I forgot about that slide.
Well, that's okay. We can all look at it together as well.
Yeah.
I just think this is a great example of how words have multiple meanings, and we definitely have to think about the words we use and how we use it. I love the first one, March plan for next August. How confusing it could be for some of our kids, right?
Actually took me a moment to think about the farmer Bill Dyson-House.
This is pertinent for our current legislative session, isn't it? What a bill to die. I love the last one, the beginning campaign to run down jaywalkers. It's, no, that's not what you mean. And did any group take a look at the sample passage and think about what words they would teach from that?
Our group looked at this of Emily, and Dell. And the words were mysterious, gust.
It's a different color. Gust. Tell us, okay, do you want to tell us why you were thinking of these ones?
Mysterious is multisyllabic, so it just jumps out to me as a word that my kids are going to struggle with.
Mhm.
And gust isn't a word you hear every day.
And
So
then I
hence-
think we did apprehension as well,
Oh, that's a good one.
was the third one.
I definitely think of apprehension and mysterious as more of those Latin, but I'm not sure if gust I would need to understand the passage.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe soar, I would want to make sure that they knew that, because it's, it's an easy one to do too, because with it being a relationship to fly. Confusion, hopefully they would know, but if they didn't, that would be an interesting one to look at as well. Kimberly, yes, tell us more. What are you thinking with soar meaning multiple meanings? Oh, are you thinking the other SOAR, S-O-R-E?
Yeah, we were talking about, I had just come out of telling my daughter, I took a little break and I was like, my hand is sore. And so thinking about tier 2 and soar and soar.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. The homonyms are, that's an important one to bring up. Mhm. One, two, three. We got 5. They said 3 of 5, I think, did they? Did anyone try doing a student-friendly explanation for any of these? Or how you think about how you would teach it to your kids? Okay, or did somebody look in the book where they do say mysterious gust, sore, confusion, and apprehension?
There's always checking your work. I thought of gust of wind and Winnie the Pooh and the very windy day came to mind.
I heard somebody else commenting it too. Was that you, Kimberly?
It was probably,
Oh.
we kind of cheated and we were looking in the book. So we took exactly what the book had.
Well, we should cover
But
up
then-
the answers in the future. Go ahead.
But then some of our answers though, well, I didn't see the book. So Della had the book and then a couple of them, Emily and I, the combination of the 3, we actually like said exactly what the book said. So that was, I think it was either soar or gust, to fly, or I don't remember, Del, which one it was that it was the same wording as the book. Was it gust or soar? To fly. I guess that would be soar.
To fly fast is what it says. In the
Fly
book.
Yeah.
fast is what you had, and that's exactly what the book has. You also got mysterious, hard to understand exactly what the book had.
So he was over there, you know, correcting he was quizzing us.
Although, I don't know, when I think of mysterious, I'm not sure if hard to understand, especially in this context. I mean, it is hard to understand, but I would want to break it and have the connection to the word mystery. There was some mystery about it. But then again, if they don't know mystery, then
Yeah.
hard to understand would work.
I think of it as, so I have a first grader, so I know this passage was for second grade, but mysterious, I think that still does require pre-teaching of vocabulary, even for second graders. So I don't know, like I could see a lot of second graders just not, well, and even reading, like if they were trying to read that, mysterious is, you can't really sound it out. Well, I mean, you can try. Yeah, I'm just like, that's a pretty, there's some, you know, combinations in there that aren't maybe your typical second grade. I was thinking of my first grader. I know that's a year younger, but still I was thinking, yeah, he'd probably need help with that word. And a lot of those second graders that are still working on their phonemic awareness and
It's
blends
complex.
and
You're right.
Yeah.
When you look at that tier, that ER being and ear instead of and you think of, you know, I guess my question is, would you then connect it to its base word of mystery? And then talk about how the Y changed to I when you added the OUS. And are there other related words that we can think of related to mystery or mysterious?
I'm taking my class.
I said
think-
We got 4
spooky
minutes left.
because I was thinking of, you know, vocab for that type of an age, that mystery, I don't know, spooky is a little more age appropriate. I don't know if and that was not in the book. So that one I did not get correct, but that was the one I just came to, knowing his vocab and
Uh-huh.
relating it to something a little more age appropriate.
I would think pre-teaching something like this, you'd want something high interest from pop culture, like I'd go straight to Scooby-Doo. If you're
Scooby-Doo.
teaching mysterious and
Mhm.
mystery, you can think about, a book you read yesterday, or has anyone seen Scooby-Doo? You know how there's always a mystery. I would use something like that.
Well,
I
and
think
I'm
my
looking at
kindergarten
this here
background is
thinking,
showing, though.
this is a tough word, apprehension. I mean, this makes me think of the video we watched earlier of the college age words. That to do something with apprehension is a pretty high, 50-cent word, is it not?
That one would lend itself towards if you're familiar with like TPR, people, the total physical response, and what does it look like if you're have apprehension, and let's pretend there's something scary on the floor, and so that would, I think, need some modeling to
Well, and Carla's got a great word in the word anxiety. As one they might be more familiar with to add in there. And that anxiety, there's what an amazing opportunity to talk about the letter X. I was having I hope I kept those notes somewhere, an aha meeting moment the other day with my own family, because this is just kind of what I do. My poor family, right? Thinking about the different sounds of X. We've got the X like in box, but we have the G like an anxious. We have, anxiety. I can't write and talk at the same time. Exit, or is it exit? Think about all the different sounds that X. Luxurious. There's your luxury. Lux. I can't have to do that one of these. Luxury, luxury and luxurious. I mean, that X. We've got to do a lot of flexing. You used the term flex, Effie, huh? Earlier. What a great opportunity if we think about anxiety and anxious and exit and luxury to think about all of the complications of letter X. It's a big one, isn't it? All right. Well, you are a fantastic group tonight. Small but mighty, right? I hope I was re-recording that. Oh, good, I was. So of course, always, yes, we'll put the attendance link back in for you. Oh, it went away when we went into breakout rooms. So
I can't grab it.
I will grab it I'll go back up to the first slide and grab it for us. As we go into reminders of our next steps and see, I double clicked it instead. Chapter 7 is where we will be focusing next week, structured literacy interventions for oral language comprehension.
Next week?
No, next month. Thank you. It's the in our house with the dyslexics, we say here, listen to what I mean, not what I say. And I'm going to go up and grab the attendance link for us really quickly for those of you who need that again, who weren't able to get it, as soon as I get back to my notes there. And if you would be comfortable sharing, we would love to have your contact in as well. So that everyone can access and support, because I think that you are another one of our great resources, and I want everyone to be able to know whom they can connect in about whatever their needs are. So I'm putting back up our contact information. I don't know what I was sharing on, so I'll resume share, and I'm going to go ahead and stop our recording. There is